Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Sam Babiak and I'm the Program Director for the Writers League of Texas. I am here with Dallas Bell, the owner at Burrowing Owl Books in Canyon and Amarillo, Texas. We just really want to get to know more about you and your bookstore, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so I guess we'll just start at the beginning. How did you get into the bookstore business?
A few years ago, my husband and I were in Chicago visiting some relatives, and we'd accidentally gotten off on the wrong train. Off on the wrong exit at a train station, and so we were walking to the other entry and came across this independent bookstore, and we were just thrilled with it. Everywhere we go, any vacation we go, we take our kids and we always go to the independent bookstores, and we were going through there alone without our kids, of course, and we were like, Canyon, Texas really needs a bookstore on the square. And that's the beginning of this idea of this bookstore. It was just a errant thought that went through our brains, and we decided to try it and see what came of it. And we knew that if we were to open up a bookstore in Canyon, it would have to be on the square, the main downtown area of Canyon. It's very quaint and very pleasing to the eye. The location was everything to us. And so sure enough, there was a spot available, and we thought, well, let's try it. And so that's how this bookstore started. We ended up having about 10,000 books in our living room when we signed a lease already. And so we had already started collecting as we were going along. We are both new and used, by the way. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's such an inspiring story. And I love that, I think this is common with other bookstore owners too, that y'all saw this need for a bookstore in your community and you were like, well, I'm going to take that on. And I think that that's really awesome because bookstores really do, I think, make a big difference. And so I'm wondering if you can just describe your bookstore, the community, the mission in 3 words.
Sure. Our bookstore in Canyon, we have two bookstores. I'll describe our original bookstore. It's 17,000 square foot bookstore. It's in an old building right on the square, as I said. It's both new and used. We have everything from regional to youth to children's section. One of the fun things about our store is we actually have a wardrobe that goes into our children's section based off of The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. It's a family store, so my kids were the ones who came up with that idea, and my husband, who is very talented, built the wardrobe to go into the section. He has also built most of my shelves within the store. So it's very family oriented. My mother even works here, so it's very nice. Yeah. We do, on most years, we do a lot of community events. We'll have store readings, poetry readings, author events, story time. Those are most of the years. This year, not so much, but and we missed those events this year. My Amarillo store came into being because we noticed that we had so many people coming from Amarillo, about 15 minutes away, down to our store in Canyon. There wasn't an independent bookstore up in Amarillo at the time. Hastings had closed. We came on the end of the Hastings era, so we kind of filled that niche down here. But in Amarillo, they still did not have an independent bookstore. They had one used bookstore up there that was open part-time. And they did have Barnes and Noble, and that was it. And so we were like, we have so many customers coming down, let's bring it to them. And so we found a great location on 34th and Coulter, which is over by, it's in the Summit Center shopping center, and over by the hospital and in that district. And so we opened that in October of last year, right before the coronavirus hit. So it was really great. It's a little larger. It's I would call my Canyon store very rustic, and my Amarillo store kind of mid-century. So it has 2 different looks, but it's maintained and run the same way. So a customer who is familiar with the Amarillo store can come down to Canyon or vice versa, and they can use their store credit, their punch cards and everything else within both stores. So
Yeah, that's amazing. They're like sister stores.
they are sister stores.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering also, since you started the Amarillo bookstore right in October as the pandemic hit, like what do you think the responsibility of a bookstore is today? And if you've seen that evolve over time?
The responsibility of a bookstore is really interesting. I did not put a lot of thought into it when I opened up the bookstore. I was wanting to open up a really small, quaint little bookstore that people would, filter in and everything. But through the years, we'd noticed that it really was a community store. It's a neighborhood store. In fact, we all oftentimes call it your friendly neighborhood bookstore, because that's what we are. We're your neighborhood bookstore. Folks come in, they're wanting the community of sharing books. They want to be able to find a good book, have someone recommend a good book, or just empathize with you when you don't get the right book, so it's all about sharing. Books are made to be shared. I truly believe that. I think that once you read a good book, you need to share that with your neighbor or your friends or your colleagues, and say, you need to read this book, it's fantastic. And that's what we thrive to do here within Burrowing Owl Books. When COVID hit, it was right at the beginning of Amarillo's bookstore. It was hard. It was really hard. The Canyon community came together and really supported us tremendously down here, but we were so new up in Amarillo that it was more difficult to get our name out and that people would know. But now that we've been open and back in business again, we gradually have been adding more and more customers, and it's really great. We see the same people every week sometimes. Sometimes we see them once every 3 months, but then they come in and we know exactly what they want and what they're looking for. And so it's building those relationships with your community and knowing your customers. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about indie bookstores, is that there's this sense of like community and like just being there for each other and knowing that you're in the same community, I guess.
Exactly.
And that's something that you don't get at bigger bookstores at all, really.
True.
Yeah, and so you've already talked a little bit about the kids section with the wardrobe, and I'm really wondering what your favorite section of the bookstore is.
Oh goodness. I like my store. I would probably say, and in fact, I'm sitting in in the children's section right now, and this is the middle readers right now. And I guess if you were to say which was my favorite genre, one of them would have to be my middle readers. My favorite portion of the store probably would have to be the wardrobe. People really just love it. They come through. They bring their kids to come run through the wardrobe, and they do a circle through it, and the kids enjoy it, and going back and forth and opening the doors and seeing what they can find. And grandparents will bring their kids in and do the same. They'll say, this is magical, this is so good, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Lucy and Edwin, and they'll open the door and they'll get their pictures made with it. So I guess so. I guess the wardrobe, the children's section. I love all of my sections, or most of my sections. I love, and I think Lemony Snicket said, there are so many books written because there are so many types of people. There are so many types of books because there are so many types of people. And that's so true. I mean, what works for one person doesn't work for another, but it's kind of fun. So.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have to visit your bookstore soon, both of them,
okay.
actually.
That would be wonderful.
And so besides books, what is one thing that you love to see customers buy and walk out of the store with?
So I ended up pulling this because I knew you were going to ask that question. I got a heads up, and I'm going to pull one and I'll show you. It is a book, but it's a special type of book. my college student who works for me, who I've known since she was 12 years old, she is very artsy and very, she does a lot of my drawings through here, or the chalkboards and that type of thing. But about 2 or 3 years now, we've been putting together what's called wrapped books. And you might have heard of them as books, a blind date with a book, that type of thing. Well, we kind of added a little extra with it. We wrap a book, and on the front of the book, we will write the first line, the opening lines of the book, and stamp it with our stamp. And then sometimes she even doodles. And so like this book, I'll show you, this is a book, and I'll read it to you. It's when I think of my wife, I always think of her head, the shape of it to begin with. And so Emily had drawn this. And so it's kind of fun, and she'll do various things. And so oftentimes, and we can customize and that type of thing, but people really enjoy these. We're so surprised at how much they enjoyed them. They buy them as a risk, or they buy them as a gift. And so it's something that they can do and give someone without ever having to pick out an actual book for them. It's just based on how it looks in the opening line, and whether or not it catches you. Yeah.
That is so cool. And opening lines are some of my favorite parts of books, just because they can like really make or break whether I want to read it or not.
Exactly.
And that is just like a really cool way to sell books and, just things out there. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So this is our last question of the day. Is there anything else that you'd like folks to know about your bookstores?
We are both new and used. We strive to be your community bookstore. We try to be your neighborhood bookstore. I read in an article this past week that going through a bookstore, one should not consider it a treasure hunt, rather a nature walk, which I think is a brilliant way of looking at it, because when you're coming through a bookstore, you should keep your mind, especially a used bookstore, you should keep your mind open to possibilities, to other people's desires or their needs. It is a treasure hunt, but it is also a nature walk. It really is fun to go through and find those treasures and find those unique gems that there are. Also, with independent bookstores, it's really good to know that we provide so much that online businesses cannot provide. We're the ones who help support your neighborhood band. We're the ones who can recommend a book or host an author event for some of our locals, and it's very unique. It's very community oriented. We work a lot with WT. We work a lot with WTAMU, the small university here. We work a lot with the school district. We work with the city. We work with the other community shops in the area. So I think just when you come to, and I'm rambling, I'm sorry. So I think when you come to Canyon, when you come to Amarillo, just look for us, see what you find. We'd love to help you. So,
yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was good to meet you, Sam.